They say it was a dark and stormy night is the worst opening line ever for a novel, but I think Reddit can do better. What's your worst opening line? One here seems to remember the Bulwer Lytton fiction contest, named after the author of that dark and stormy night line Before a Wrinkle in Time, and some of its entries published into books. Nurse Daniel smelled like good Italian bread. The surface of the strange forbidden planet was green and rough, like cottage cheese long after the sell-by date. Safeway wasn't yet open when Smith drove into the parking lot, his Chevy putting out gunmetal blue smoke from its broken tailpipe, to buy eggs. My left nut began to ache in preparation to climax as I thrust it in and out repeatedly. The first time it ached, and it distracted me slightly from the mechanical moaning of my state-of-the-art sex doll, complete with anon tentacles wrapped tightly around my throat, playfully choking me. I didn't know this small ache in my left nut would lead to bankruptcy, destitution, depression. I'm wondering if any children I potentially had would glow in the dark for 3 generations. Let me introduce you to the magnificent prose of the illustrious Timothy Dexter, a pickle for the knowing ones, and the first royal arch in the world, almost not quite but very high up upon. So they a good mark to be seen, so the woman's lick to see the frown, and all people loves to see them as the Quakers will calm. I reached into my jeans to grasp my salty nutsack. Seemed like so long ago that we stopped at that combination gas station laundromat convenience store where I enthusiastically traded the last of the koi fish from under your car's seats for $1.37 worth of roasted peanuts in a joyfully colorful foil and plastic envelope. I was so excited at the time, anticipating the salted, roasted crunchy snack, that I have come to regret that purchase. You might enjoy reading about the contest based on the original source. Since 1980 the Bulwer Lytton fiction contest has challenged participants to write an atrocious opening sentence to the worst novel never written. Our whimsical literary competition honors Sir Edward George Bulwer Lytton, whose 1830 novel Paul Clifford begins with "It was a dark and stormy night." www. The night was dark. The rain fell down in big drops. It was wet. I stepped into the street, and it was hard like pavement. I took a drag of my vape and blew out a cloud of fishberry fur and turned my head just in time to lock eyes with Lindsay Lohan as she ran me over with a dirty pink 2009 Honda Accord. The last thing I saw before fading into eternal darkness was her license plate. It read "Muff, my fish Randy died." You are looking for the famous Bulwer Lytton fiction contest. Here's a gem to get you started. Her already impeccable nails, not for the first time since the journey began, pondered snidely. If this would dissolve into a vignette of minor inconveniences like all the other holidays spent with Basil, grew louder and yet less clear. PTP. The rain I hear. No, the dark and stormy night was just the wind. The wind with the sound, that sound of a howl, or perhaps a cackle of that of the jackal now. The hyenas. They're here. The weather is bleak and the silence is sublime. Perhaps all this nonsense was just in my mind. Well, you should get the entire line before judging it. East of wind which swept up the streets, for it is in London that our scene lies, rattling along the housetops, and fiercely agitating the scanty flame of the lamps that struggled against the darkness. Edward Bulwer Lytton. Douglas had to poop. His butt was all stinky because he had to poop so badly. There was a gross woman named Rebecca who was sunbathing all naked, and she was fat. Douglas walked up to her and said, "I need to poop." "Okay." Rebecca replied, "I like poop." Douglas squatted down over the fat sunbathing lady and went poop. The poop sat there on Rebecca's boobs looking like a wiener. You expect them to be. I wrote this because I need beer money. Hang in there, this is going to suck. Also shout out to my bows Brad, Chad, and Tony. Okay. So it was a dark and stormy night, right? There's a whole contest devoted to this. The Bulwer Lytton contest. 2023's winner. Woman, more specifically, she was the kind of beautiful woman who had an hour-long skincare routine that made her look either ethereal or like a glazed donut, depending on how attracted to her you were. A favorite from my childhood. It was a dark and stormy night. I was standing on the deck. The captain said to me, "Tell me a story." my son, and so I began. It was a dark and stormy night. I was standing on the deck. The captain said to me, "Tell me a story, my son." And so I began. It was a dark and stormy night. Was that kind of dark where you could see it was dark, but the feeling was that it wasn't dark? It was probably stormy too, but like the same kind of storm that some people like. So maybe it was sunny, but that wouldn't make sense with the dark, would it? With purple streaks and red tips that reaches my mid-back and icy blue eyes like limpid tears, and a lot of people tell me I look like Amy Lee, and if you don't know who she is, get the hell out of here. I imagine there's an argument to be made for Kafka's The Metamorphoses. As Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a gigantic insect. Gotta give it credit where it's due. Most recipe websites, it sure gets to the point damn quick. When you have nothing good to do because of the shit weather and the Wi-Fi is down and the only food in the house is off-brand ramen that proclaims to be the most liver of the cheese shrimp flavor. Aiming to scrape some crud off my shoe was a sly solution to that. I squelched the phlegmish uprising in the back of my throat and soon strutted off toward the cacophony, and I'll tell you how I got here. Our eyes met across the bar. I'd been eyeing her with my eyes all night, and she finally eyed me back. As I walked over to her with my feet powered by my legs, she tossed her long hair to the side, and her boobs boobed boobily in her blouse that barely covered the aforementioned boobs. The anus was puckered tightly around the 3-foot section of rebar. The gloss of the street lamps glow on the trickling rivulets and general sheen of water from the downpour make every wrinkle of the dead man's asshole somehow more visible than broad daylight. Thus, as I looked at my clean dick, no trace of peanut butter remaining, and then at my eyes when I learned that post-nut clarity is so is shame. Chapter for getting rid of the dog is easy, but how to explain it to my parents? Guided by a gust of wind, a leaf weaved between the buildings of the old shabby and run-down ghost town, in which we had grown accustomed to. If a book opens like that, in not reading it, I seen a grammar mistake in which I had despised. I would argue there's a case to be made for it started with a message request on Facebook. If this leaves you stumped, the book was the proud recipient of the 26th Bad Sex in Fiction Award, Katerina by James Frey. As soon as Bill walked into the room, he knew what had happened. There was no mistaking that stench. "God damn it, Frank," Bill managed to yell between bouts of dry heaving. "What did I tell you about fucking coconuts?" The supernova paled in comparison to the jump engines of an Infinity Fleet Inquisitor battle cruiser as they spooled up for jump mode, striking fear and awe into the hearts of the Empire's enemies. I already knew that the money is on the dresser. He didn't need to tell me that, or the rest of his crappy life story. I'm not interested, and I've already done all the faking that I've been paid for. I saw a post about an official challenge to make the worst opening line in a book. I remember one of the challenge winners having this ramble about yellow and white fake cheese tasting the same. I woke up and then I masturbated, and then I got out of bed, and then I took a shower, and then I brushed my teeth, and then I ate a Pop-Tart, and then I said fuck it and masturbated again. Finally his cell phone died after hours of endless and pointless scrolling. As he let it slip from his hands, he let out a sigh as his own new friend slapped down onto the hardwood floor. It was still dark when the alarm sounded like it does every morning with its chimes of electronic bells that were chosen from a list provided on one of millions of portable devices. The Doritos weren't going to eat themselves, so I helped myself to 3 bowls full before the reception began, knowing the shit show to come would be the ultimate entertainment. "Hi, my name is..." You're probably wondering why. Like, just stop talking to the reader and ruining the immersion. I want to be lost in your world, not brought into it. I went cross-eyed momentarily as I ejaculated into the handful of tissues, an unintelligible moan escaping my lips as the hentai on the screen beside me roused me to climax. I removed my robe and stood before her. Taut, nubile, proud. She was much, much older than me, but her breasts, while awesome, I felt reborn, baptized in erotic majesty. The man in the white overcoat glanced down at the enormous bulge in his pants and was shocked, for he realized that his head was on backwards and he had just shat himself. I came They threw me in jail, and 9 months later you were born. Your mother died before telling the cops anything substantial, and I've been raising you ever since. I was a spider. Not in the literal sense. But I had 8 legs and a thorax. Man, how crazy this day would be with my 8 legs and a thorax I wasn't supposed to ever have. It was the very end of the night. Some might even call it day. Anyways, I was eating a bagel when it started storming on the TV in front of me. It was sunny outside, like 2 dogs sniffing each other's butts. The cop cars sat nose to tail, their occupants conversing quietly through their open windows in the early morning mist. Glaringly, she glared at me with a sharp glare that flared up her glasses until they fogged up with air. But she just kept staring at my oversized sweatpants. Out of curiosity, did you also recently watch the Star Trek TNG episode The Royale? 'Cause this and the fact that it's so mediocre is a big part of the story. He was certain that the sound he was hearing was more of a slurping sound, and that left Roger feeling quite deceived since he had been told that Rachel sucked. This is Katana, she's got my back. She can cut all of you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn. I would advise not getting killed by her. Ha ha ha. Yay. You're probably wondering, what's so funny? Well, I'll tell you. But first I need to go back to when it all started. Now back when 'twas a dark and stormy night. The nanny goat went blind. She slipped upon a prickle and pricked her. Never you mind. Sorry, what was the question?